Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open in the Atlantic Ocean on a ship called the Texas Rose. It's been hired by Professor Aitken to take him to the Bermuda Triangle, but only his son Charles knows the real motivation for the expedition. Diving bell engineer Greg thinks that they're only out here to test his new contraption capable of record-breaking ocean descents. Captain Daniels warns them that their destination is known for mysterious disappearances, but he still took the job, so isn't too worried, I guess. He spends the entire voyage either complaining or asking questions about the bell because Captain Curious can't comprehend a bubble being trapped in something. While he's having his little mind completely blown, Charlie and Dad have a conversation about how superior their brains are to everybody else. Aitken says, "Don't let the seamen scare you with horror stories, we're here to find the lost city of Atlantis like highly educated Englishmen." There's also the cabin boy Sandy and some expendable crew members like Grogan, Jacko and Fenn. In the morning, the Texas Rose stops at some obscure location designated by Aitken, who sends his son overboard instead of going himself. Greg guides them down beyond the bell's recommended maximum depth because what could possibly go wrong? Suddenly a plesiosaur pops up through the hole in the floor trying to eat these strange-looking snails out of their steel shell. Charlie says not to tap on the glass or they might scare it away, so Greg contemplates tossing this moron out of the bell. We could just blame it on the Loch Ness Monster, but Greg uses a live wire to electrocute her into extinction instead. It was a wonderful specimen, Charlie says, so we continue searching for more exotic seafood in the name of culinary science. Outside a cave entrance on the seafloor is a golden welcome pole, so they sit on it with the anus of the bell for a closer look. Confirming it's of Atlantean origin, they hoist it up to the Texas Rose with the intention of putting it in a museum. The crew get the wrong impression and think the scientists are cutting them out of the spoils of a treasure hunt, so Daniels tells Aitken to give the men a bonus. When he says what nonsense, one shoots him in the back because he was such a massive threat and cuts loose his son and Greg. They sink to the bottom of the ocean and the two men think, how could this day get any worse, when a giant octopus shows us how. Called the Sentinel, it goes for the Texas Rose and begins climbing up the side, where Daniels quick draws on this monster, but that achieves nothing. All of the crew except for Sandy the cat and the dying professor get thrown overboard while Aitken rambles on about dark occult gods and warlords of Atlantis. The Sentinel grabs each one of the outcasts and drags them down to the bottom of the ocean while grabbing the diving bell on its way back into the cave. It doesn't actually harm anybody and just dispenses them into a large air pocket where the crew is all friendly until we can find a way out. Charles doesn't know they've just shot his father and spots what looks like a woman on the ridge, but it's just some Atlantean dude in a dress named Atmir. Looking like a progressive rock star from the 70s, he deploys a unit of spear-wielding soldiers called Guardians who struggle to see out of the murky fishbowls on their heads. They all wear little booty shorts and promise to take the lost travelers to safety, but our scientists and sailors are now their slaves. There are 7 Atlantean cities down in this cave, so Atmir says he will take them to the city of Troy, but he has a real attitude about it. Charlie says Plato spoke about 9 cities of Atlantis, but Atmir says, well, wasn't Plato dumb then, and leads the group through a swamp. This is probably like Disneyland for these soggy soldiers when a monster called the Mugdun emerges, but not even the surface dwellers have much of a reaction. However, Moggy has just popped up to say hello, and upon seeing the familiar haircut of a nautical nobleman, it goes right down below. Arriving at the gates of Troy, Atmir forgot the city was destroyed by Spartans before it even sunk, so he takes the prisoners to Var instead. It looks like Tartarus from the outside, as slaves from the surface are made to build a fortress to protect the Atlanteans from giant turtles called Zargs. Greg sees a beautiful woman first and calls dibs, but that's not fair as Charlie didn't have his glasses on. He approaches Delphine with pickup lines like, "What's a pretty girl doing in a slave camp like this?" when coming upon the perfect weapon to escape. Using a bucket, he attacks the guards, and the spear-wielding Atlantean warriors get beaten up by a bunch of unarmed sailors and scientists. Even the children give disapproving looks like they could have done better, but by sheer numbers the vision-impaired guards overwhelm the 5 elite seamen. Greg learns that the bucket was in fact not the perfect weapon, as the newcomers are thrown in a dungeon, but he was probably just showing off to the babe. Charles is taken to the royal city, where the Atlantean in the distance turns out to be an actual woman, this time named Atsil. She's an inquisitor for the royal family and says that Charles has been deemed just pompous enough to be granted a meeting with the king. On their way, they pass through the Hall of Contemplation, which is where levitating students take naps while pretending to meditate. Atsil explains that the Atlanteans are actually Martians who fled their dying world millennia ago but crash-landed on Earth. This explains why they cut an M into their hair, I suppose, as we meet King Atraxon, who plans to enslave all of mankind for their labor. But he installs Gills on the slaves to help rebuild Earth into a Martian utopia, but this means they can never return to the oxygen-rich surface. They have a large glass thimble that allows Charles to see into the future, so they place it onto his very susceptible brain. Their vision for a perfect world is just the same authoritarian nanny state that many humans have proposed already, but Charles seems kinda into it. Meanwhile in the dungeon, Greg hits Delphine with the "so do you come here often" line, but she's a slave with Gills, so there's no other option. Greg says, "Alright lady, cut the crap and tell us how to get out of here," so she goes to get her father to explain what she already could have. Briggs is the long-lost captain of the ghost ship Mary Celeste and says what we already know from the king about a Martian invasion from beneath the sea. Suddenly the city comes under attack from the Zargs, so Briggs leads the defenses in raining down cannon fire on the slow-moving threat. It takes a few days, but eventually the kaiju begin to scale the fortress, so the slaves throw sticks and stones to try to break their bones. Delphine is running around doing something and witnesses her father get killed when a Zarg steps on him, then falls off the wall. It then rips a hole in the side of the dungeon and eats a few prisoners before inadvertently breaking the gate and allowing them to escape. Delphine comes searching for a new father figure and finds Greg, who she clings to for the rest of the movie like a side order of salmon. She shows the seamen a way through a sewer system to rescue Charles, because if Greg dies we're going to need him to operate the diving bell. They reach him quite easily because the door unlocks at the sight of a slave, and neither of these aliens put up any resistance. The brainwashed man refuses to leave anyway, so Greg knocks him out and carries him away from the soggy seducers. When he regains consciousness, Charlie realizes that turning every human into seafood probably isn't the best idea, so joins them in escaping. The group follow Delphine, who's been told to show some leg every chance she gets, and probably just leads them back the same way they came in. When reaching an impasse of soldiers, Greg shows off again by charging them with fists because the Martians only have weapons. They easily overpower the guards, who refuse to use the supply of guns sitting right beside them, so now we have armed seamen on the loose. They escape the city, but Mugdun guards the swamp and doesn't see any pageboy Bobs with micro fringes, so doesn't let them pass. We send out our two most valuable diving bell pilots to battle this thing, or rather shoot it in the face until it retreats underwater. Greg is like, "Did you see how I just handled that thing, babe?" But Moggy returns and eats Jacko, because if you don't pay the toll you get made into a dinner roll. The rest escape but are attacked by giant piranha, who leap out of the water and latch onto every member of the party. They don't kill anybody and just take a couple punches to the head to let go as our group finally get back to the diving bell. Despite always walking, the Atlanteans have beat them here because Delphine forgot to tell us about the quicker and safer way. Prince Atmir leads the Martian Guardians in a shootout with the Earthlings because they've given up on their spears and decided to use guns. They're horrible shots with those helmets, so Delphine has time to say she must stay here because of her gills and surely experience endless torture. Greg just kinda looks at her like, well, that sucks, and without even giving the tuna woman a kiss goodbye, he jumps off the cliff. Inside the diving bell he finds an Atlantean ambush, but Greg has his shirt off now, so he's basically unbeatable. Delphine picks up his rifle and protects the group as they jump off the ledge into the water, making sure to get that leg in every shot. They somehow all fit inside the bell without removing another shirt, while Delphine gets this crazy stance going on, but whatever works, I suppose. Atmir has been ordering cannons to bombard the place for the past 10 minutes, but all he manages to do is bring down the mountain. The bell just bounces around for a bit, then gets sucked into a whirlpool and shot out of the same cave we arrived through. They reach the surface, but upon boarding the Texas Rose, Sandy waits ready to shoot the crew for their attempted mutiny. He isn't sure if Daniels is in on it though, until he swipes the guns and reveals that it was he who shot the professor in the back. The prisoners are locked in a cabin with Aitken, but everyone seems to have forgotten how they left the ship in the first place. An angry Octopusosaurus attacks the ship with no intention of taking anybody alive this time, and reveals the true purpose of the golden statue. It's a damn cephalopod club that the Sentinel uses to pummel the Texas Rose, allowing the scientists to escape and fight back. Charles uses that Cambridge education to headbutt Grogan in the balls while the monster rips the side off the ship and the whole thing begins to sink. Everybody jumps into a lifeboat except for Daniels, who's on deck and gets crushed with a targeted swing from the mutated mollusk. The Texas Rose then sinks to the bottom of the Atlantic, but everyone else survives, including Grogan and Fenn, but most importantly the cat. The traders are made to paddle them all the way back to civilization while Charles begins planning another trip to Atlantis. And the movie ends.